What did the wedding photographer's assistant find that made her quit on the spot? I was having coffee with my best friend Nadia when she got the call that destroyed her entire world in 14 seconds. I watched her face transform from laughing about her honeymoon tan to complete devastation, and my stomach twisted into knots as I heard her saying, "What do you mean they're gone?" over and over until her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. She was staring at nothing, and her hands were shaking so violently that when she reached for her phone again, she knocked over her latte and didn't even notice the coffee spreading across the table. Both memory cards corrupted, backup camera failed, everything from our wedding is just gone, Nadia finally whispered, and I felt my brain start racing because she'd said the photographer's name was Garrett Paul, and something about that name was making my skin crawl, but I couldn't figure out why. She pulled up his business card on her phone with trembling fingers, and when I saw that pretentious cursive G in his logo, I literally felt the blood drain from my face because I'd seen it before, years ago, on photos from Nadia's college sorority formals. This wasn't Garrett Paul at all, this was Garrett Paulson, the ex who'd completely lost his mind when Nadia dumped him senior year, except now he was using a shortened last name like some kind of disguise. My hands went cold as I remembered him showing up at her graduation party uninvited and making her cry, sending her flowers every week for 6 months with increasingly unhinged notes, and that time he'd cornered her new boyfriend in a bar bathroom and threatened him. But what made me feel like I was going to throw up was the realization that just hit me like a punch to the gut. Garrett had photographed 3 other weddings in her husband's circle over the past 2 years, which meant this psychopath had been playing the long game, building his reputation piece by piece, knowing that eventually someone would recommend him for Nadia's wedding. My first instinct was to call the police, but I knew we needed proof before anyone would believe this insane story. So with shaking hands, I called Jade, who ran social media for the biggest wedding planning company in the state. Garrett Paul? Oh my god, his assistant Becca just quit last week and applied at our venue, Jade said, and something in her voice made my pulse quicken because she sounded worried. She said she'd call Becca right now and put her on speaker, and when Becca answered, her voice was so quiet we could barely hear her say, "I've been losing sleep about this," before she took a deep breath. I quit because I found folders on his computer of weddings he told clients were corrupted, but the photos were all there, perfectly fine, just sitting in hidden folders like trophies. I felt physically sick as Becca's voice started shaking harder, and she said, 3 folders with date codes as names, including one from 2 months ago, June 8th, and I heard Nadia make a sound like she'd been punched because her wedding was June 8th. Becca agreed to meet us immediately at a coffee shop downtown, and she looked terrified, constantly checking over her shoulder as she opened her laptop with trembling fingers. She showed us the screenshots she'd taken before quitting because her gut told her something was seriously wrong and she needed evidence. There they were on her screen, 3 folders labeled with random number strings that looked like gibberish, but she'd figured out were dates, and she'd documented everything including emails where Garrett had specifically instructed her to tell certain clients their files were corrupted, while she could literally see the photos sitting right there in his drive. The folder showed 1,000 photos inside according to the file count she'd captured, and I felt rage building in my chest as Becca showed us preview thumbnails she'd managed to screenshot showing ceremony shots, first dance, cake cutting, everything that bastard claimed was gone. The most damning part made my blood boil, an email draft she'd screenshot where Garrett had started typing, "Some memories deserve to fade," before deleting it, but his email had auto-saved the draft and she'd captured it before he could permanently delete it. I watched Jade's face turn from shocked to furious as she started typing frantically on her phone, and within 2 hours she'd sent a professional advisory through the private vendor network that connected every major wedding business in the tri-state area with the subject line, "Urgent concerns about file handling practices," and Becca's documentation attached. My phone started buzzing nonstop as the vendor network exploded because 3 other brides saw those folder dates and recognized their own weddings, and suddenly everyone was connecting dots about how Garrett only seemed to lose photos of brides who'd rejected him at industry events or reminded him of someone, how his corrupted files always happened to attractive women who'd booked him through their husbands or boyfriends. 48 hours later, every booking Garrett had vanished as venues discovered scheduling conflicts, and planners developed different artistic visions, and I felt savage satisfaction watching his business implode.